it's Mo. We're back with another Basement Box Books unboxing, haul, and unhaul. For you, it's been a while. For me, it's only been a day. If you recall, the last Basement Box Books unboxing, we found quite a bit of mold, and it definitely freaked me out. It wasn't like, oh, a little mildew on a book because it's been in the basement. It was like yellow, black mold. It was like bad mold, and it freaked me out about my books, and it freaked me out about the mold in the basement in general. So we're gonna speed up production of this, at least until we get some of the books that were down at the bottom of the pile. If you've watched these videos before, you know that I have hundreds of books in the basement that have not really been touched since we moved in 2015. So it's time to go through all those boxes and figure out if these are books that I want to keep, figure out if I do want to keep them, if I want to put them back in the basement, or if I want them to go on my TBR. And ideally, I will not keep all of these books. Ideally, I will be unhauling a lot of these books, if not the majority of them in the long run. That hasn't quite worked out yet, but we'll see how things go by the end. Today we have a small box and two regular size boxes, so we're going to call them 9, 10, and 11. Out of the 8 boxes of books that I've already gone through, I've consolidated that into only 3 boxes going back into the basement, which is pretty awesome. I've unhauled quite a few books over that period, and a few books have gone on my TBR. As of this time of filming, I have not read any of the books yet that I have brought up from the basement, but when I do, I will definitely let you know in these videos. The first book we have is Mike Mignola's Hellboy, The Lost Army, a novel by Christopher Golden. I feel like Christopher Golden is much more well known now because he is writing horror books, or like cozy horror books. Some people like his work, some people don't. I've actually never read a Christopher Golden, but I know of his work from the Hellboy books. I also have Hellboy Odd Jobs, which is short stories edited by Christopher Golden. There's no one. Oh, Greg Rucka is a comic book writer. Poppy Z. Bright has a story in here. So some notable authors and a Christopher Golden. These are both ones that I picked up because I love Hellboy so much. I love Mike Mignola's artwork. And there is illustrations in here, which is interesting. So these are definitely ones that I am keeping, and I think these should go right on my TBR, and I should, read them. The next book we have is Do-It-Yourself Brain Surgery and Other Implausibly Titled Books. So these are supposedly real books, but they look pretty fake, about just funny covers, a funny joke book. That one we can definitely get rid of. I don't need that one. The next book is 100 Cupboards, book 1. This is a not a young adult, but a middle grade book, I think. Maybe I got this one from my mom when she was still teaching. This one is a maybe. I don't read many middle grades, but like, should I? Wow, okay, so this is Tennessee Philological Bulletin, so I'm guessing that this is something from my husband's school. I will keep that and put it back down in the basement. We have another copy of Waiting for Godot. So this is our second copy of Waiting for Godot that we found in the Basement Box Books, but it's our third copy of the play that we have in the house. So I think this one can go. It is in really good condition. This one's in pretty good condition as well. So I think this one can go. Irving's here. Here we have Tales from the Twopenny Inn, book 2 by James A. Owen. This is a very short novella with illustrations. I think we should keep this one, even though it's book 2. I have no idea where we got this. I have no idea what it's from, but we're going to keep it, but I'm going to put it back in the basement because I'm not really interested in it right now. Next we have the Penguin Book of Nonsense Verse, selected and illustrated by Quentin Blake. These are multiple different kinds of poems, all nonsense poems, all different poets, a lot of them anonymous, but I did see like Lewis Carroll in there, and then they're illustrated by Quentin Blake, who's well known for illustrating like the Roald Dahl books. I think we'll keep this one, and we will keep it out. I'll put it in my poetry collection. Why not? If you've been watching, you know that our dear friend Alex gave us a lot of Sherlock Holmes books, and this is one of them. This is the Sherlock Holmes and the Thistle of Scotland. Scotland, a novel by L.B. Greenwood. I've never heard of L.B. Greenwood before until I started looking at the short story collections about Sherlock Holmes that I have had a lot of and have gotten rid of most of. Last box, I kept a couple to read specific stories out of the short stories. This is a novel, but I'm never going to get to this one, so that's got to go. Another middle grade book, The Magic Thief by Sarah Prinius. This one can definitely go. I'm not interested in that at all. Oh, this is a beautiful copy of Shadows on the Grass by Isak Dinesen. I will definitely keep this, and we can go ahead and put it on the TBR. Graham Crackers, Funny Memories, Silly Bits, and Outright Lies by Monty Python's Graham Chapman. This is a memoir by the late, great Graham Chapman from Monty Python. I will definitely be keeping this, but I'll put it back in the basement because I don't need it right now. A lot of the books down there are vintage sci-fi that we got from my dad. This is a Michael Moorcock book. I've been keeping all the Michael Moorcock because he's such a famous, well-known classic sci-fi artist, but I have never actually read him, so there must come a time when I have to go through those Michael Moorcock books and decide if I actually want them. The Angel Esmeralda, 9 Stories by Don DeLillo. If you watched my best and worst of 2023, Don DeLillo made my worst, so I don't think I'm really interested in Don DeLillo's writing, and short stories wouldn't be the way to go anyway, so we will unhaul that one. And this is Mrs. Polifax and the Hong Kong Buddha by Dorothy Gilman. Zany, irrepressible Emily Polifax, New Jersey's foremost secret agent, is back. Well, we're definitely keeping this, and I think we should go ahead and put this on the TBR. That sounds fun. Okay, so that was the first box done. And in that box, we had 4 books going back into the basement. 1, maybe. I'm going to put this in a try chapter. We have 5 books going on the TBR and 5 books getting unhauled. I'm a little bit in trouble in that I need to go find some like liquor boxes or something to put these books in. Ooh. This one I feel like hasn't been opened in a long time. The first book in this box is The Winter Queen by Devin Carey. This looks like a fantasy book. And this looks like the kind of book that when I was reading fantasy when I was like a teen and in my 20s, I would have liked, but I'm never going to read this. So that is an unhaul. Taipei by Herman Melville. I've never read any Herman Melville, so this is one that I would definitely want to keep, but I can put that back in the basement. A Wordsworth classic of Rudyard Kipling's The Second Jungle Book. I've never read The Jungle Book, but it is one that I've wanted to read. I will definitely keep that and put it back in the basement. Next we have Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card. We talked about it last time, but vintage sci-fis like this, especially Orson Scott Card, my husband and I both love. I've only ever read Ender's Game. This is in the Ender Game series, and this would be a good one to just go on our read shelf, even though we haven't read it, because we do keep collections of certain authors on our read shelf, so that's where that one's gonna go. This is a cool vintage book, Sailing Alone Around the World and the Voyage of the Libertad by Joshua Slocum. This just looks really cool. Will I ever read it? Maybe not. I'm going to put it back in the basement. A great copy of 1984. I've never read this book by George Orwell, but it is one that I want to keep. I will put it back in the basement because I'm not going to get to it anytime soon. The Heart of Darkness and the Secret Share by Joseph Conrad. Another good vintage classic. We'll keep it. Put it in the basement. Here's another nonfiction about water. Into the Great Solitude, an Arctic Journey by Robert Perkins. This is another one that like I don't know anything about but sounds cool, so let's keep that one. This is a pretty good copy of The Old Man and the Sea, but I have a better, awesome vintage copy already on my shelves. I read this one a few years ago, so this one can get unhauled. The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I also have a copy of this that I read a few years ago. This one has like commentary and notes on it, but I don't think I need to keep this. I have thought about this story a lot since I read it, so it is one that I might revisit, but I would use the copy that I already have, or most likely listen to it on audio. One-Eyed Cat by Paula Laux. I think that Paula Laux is a young adult author, and I think these are probably like classic from the 80s. I love the idea of a cat, but the first couple of lines of this says that it's about a kid who shoots a wild cat. I don't want to read that. The Pocketbook of O. Henry stories. I've never read any O. Henry stories. This is a pretty cool like library copy paperback. I love these, so I'll keep this one in the basement. Oh, The Tale of Two Cities and Great Expectations Expectations by Charles Dickens. This is a vintage book, and it was my mother-in-law's. She actually gave me a bunch of vintage books recently, so I'm going to keep that and put it with that. The next book is a copy of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I actually have a copy of this, but I might like this one more, so I'm going to keep this one out and check, and then one of them I'll give away and one of them I'll keep. Why do we sit on the floor, you know? Oh, interesting. So I recently read a haiku poetry book by the same press as this, and then I also picked up another book at a used book sale by the same press. It's the Peter Pauper Press. And these books are so beautiful. I recognized the haiku book, and I knew I had another book of poetry, and this is that book. So that's very exciting. Definitely keeping that out. And here's another one. So I didn't remember that I had a bunch of them, but these are both Japanese Haiku Series 3, and this is Japanese Haiku, the second series, and I read the first series. So this is fantastic. Definitely keeping these out. Definitely reading these. Very excited. This is a lovely old copy of A Wrinkle in Time. Definitely going to keep this one. I never read A Wrinkle in Time personally, but I was read A Wrinkle in Time several times. I could probably put this on my read shelf, actually. Let's do that. 4 short novels by D.H. Lawrence. Love Among the Haystacks, The Ladybird, The Fox, and The Captain's Doll. The Captain's Doll. Paul? Doll? I don't know. It's hard to see. I think I've read Love Among the Haystacks and The Fox, but I know the copy that I have wasn't as nice, so we'll definitely keep this, but probably put it, well, I'll check and see if that copy's on my read shelf. Here's a receipt from Half Price Books, so that has to be fairly recent. Here's a button. Here are birthday cards. I wish I knew what year they were from. Here's All of Us, Raymond Carver, The Collected Poems. So in our last box, we had a Raymond Carver short story collection. I've never read any Raymond Carver, but my husband really likes him, and I think this is a good one to keep out and put on the poetry shelf. Here's a copy of Mother Night by Kurt Vonnegut. I love Kurt Vonnegut. I've read a lot of his books. Mother Night is not one of them. These are not my favorite covers. I bought these covers a lot when I was reading a lot of Kurt Vonnegut in my early 30s, like mid-20s, early 30s. But I love to collect the vintage covers. We're going to put this on the red shelf because I have a whole collection of his work on my red shelf. Interesting. I've heard of this book, Einstein in Love, A Scientific Romance by Dennis Overby. I have to look into this one because I don't really know what it's about. It's longer than I would like. The type is very small. This was originally written in 2000. I'm going to put this one in the maybe pile. It has an old bookstore sticker on it. Is The Man Who Stare at Goats by John Ronson. I understand it was a movie with George Clooney. I never saw the movie. I don't really know anything about this. I think this should go in the maybe pile. We have A Practicing New Historism by Gallagher and Greenblatt. I don't know if this one was mine. It is annotated, which is adorable. I love that. But I have no idea what this is. I'm not interested in that, so we'll put that in the unhaul. Zen and the Art of Painting by Helmut Brinker. This one can go in the reference. Oh, wow. So I didn't even know I had this. This is on my want to read list. Douglas Adams' Starship Titanic, and this is by Terry Jones. So Douglas Adams is my all-time favorite writer. He wrote my all-time favorite book, my all-time favorite trilogy, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and this is a book that Terry Jones wrote. Terry Jones is a British comic. He wrote this in reference to part of a Hitchhiker's Guide book. It was in Life, the Universe, and Everything. So I would definitely be interested in this. This definitely has to go on my TBR. Next is Gail Tsukiyama's The Language of Threads, a novel. I read The Samurai's Garden by this author many, many, many years ago, and I have one other book of hers on my TBR. I think I can keep this one and put it on my TBR. This one might be a good one for a try chapter, but we'll put it on the TBR for now. The Day of Piglet is a philosophy book by Benjamin Hoff. I've read this and The Tao of Pooh a long time ago. The Tao of Pooh should be on my red shelf, so this one should go on my red shelf as well. Another classic, Adventures in the Skin Trade by Dylan Thomas. I've never read any Dylan Thomas. This is a good cover. I like it. I'm gonna put it in the basement though. It's funny that I have this one, which is The Final Solution, A Story of Detection by Michael Chabon, because my friend Michael actually gave me a copy of this last summer to read, and I've never read it. So this one can get unhauled. I'll keep the one that I have on my TBR. We'll see if I ever get to it. A nonfiction, Just a Geek by Will Wheaton. This is one I definitely remember buying because I was super into Will Wheaton's podcast for a while, so I wanted to read this book. Should this one go on the TBR? I guess it should. I don't like putting so many on my TBR. We're trying to get down my TBR. Here's The Void Captain's Tale by Norman Spinard. This is a vintage sci-fi. That one sounds kind of interesting. I think that can go back in the basement. Another vintage sci-fi, The Golden Helix by Theodore Sturgeon. I've never heard of this, and it doesn't have a cool cover or anything, so I think it can get unhauled. The Neon Bible, a novel by the author of Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. So I never want to read Confederacy of Dunces, so we can unhaul this one. Here's Collected Poems by Paul Auster. This one looks like one that I bought in Vermont, and that's really exciting. I love Paul Auster. I'm definitely keeping this, putting it in the poetry section. Atlantic Books was oh, that's where this one came from. So this must have come from Atlantic Books, which was a used and new bookstore in Cape May, New Jersey. Very exciting. And then I have two Laurie R. King books. I have Nightwork and Locked Rooms. This is in the Sherlock Holmes, Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes series. This is in her other detective series. That's it for this box. I've read from both of this series, but I haven't read them in such a long time. I still love the Mary Russell series, so I've been considering going back to relook at that. So I think I should keep these because I might revisit them, but they're definitely going in the basement. Let's see how many books that was. That was a big one. 35 in box 10. 10 are going back in the basement. 1 is going on reference. 2 are maybes. 8 are getting unhauled. 1 is a vintage. 5 are going on my red shelf. And that means that, oh my god, I'm so excited about this poetry one. 8 are going on my TBR. That's a lot. But I'm so excited about the poetry. Makes it worth it, really. Okay, last box. I'm a little bit worried that this one is going to be the one that might be moldy. Not super stoked about that. First one is one I've never heard of. It is Shame the Devil by George Pelicanos. It says award-winning writer, producer of The Wire. So I have a feeling that this was my husband's book because he liked that show. I've never seen that show and I have no affiliation for this book. So I'm going to put it on the unhaul pile, but he might want to keep that one. I have Cat's Letters to Santa by Bill Adler and illustrated by Paul Bacon. Let's see. Dear Santa, I would like to visit the ASPCA. That's where I was born. Your fan, Pause. Dear Santa Claus, I need a place to sleep. The lady got married again and the new guy doesn't want me in the bed. These are sad. Dear Santa, is there a birth control pill for cats? I don't want to be neutered. Dear Santa, how come David Letterman only does stupid dog tricks? What has he got against cats? Your fan, Amy. I don't need to keep this. Here's another mystery. This looks like one I would have gotten. It is The Blind Pig by John A. Jackson, a Sergeant Detective Mulhyson mystery. I have no recollection of this. Don't need to keep it. This is another of the Laurie R. King books. This is another in the Kate Marianelli series. Guess I'll keep it since I'm keeping the other ones, but definitely put it back in the basement. Next we have The Devil's Advocate by Morris L. West. This is a cool vintage cover. Sprayed edges. Why did vintage books have sprayed edges, but now it's like so rare? I have no idea what this is about. I bet I got this because I loved the movie The Devil's Advocate and I wondered if it was the same. I am going to look into this one. I'm going to put it in the like maybe pile. We have a D.H. Lawrence collection, St. Maur and the Man Who Died. This is a cool vintage cover. I will keep that. Put it back in the basement though. Here's The Art of Chinese Calligraphy, a little calligraphy box. This is, oh god, Eternal Night, book 1 of the Orium series, Orium series, book 1, book Dream of the Dream series. Jessica Barone has a bookmark from Brattleboro, Vermont in it. So this is probably one that I bought, and it probably is one that someone like a local Vermont author, if I had to guess. I definitely don't need that. I'm sure I never did. Sherlock Holmes Volume 1, A Study in Scarlet and Other Sherlock Holmes Stories. This is a Sherlock Holmes book. It's his writing, it's his stories, but there are illustrations in it. I don't need to keep that. And here's Volume 3 of the same sort of thing. Sherlock Holmes Mystery Magazine. We don't need to keep that. Paper Cutter, which is a comics anthology like magazine. We haven't gotten any comics recently, but all the comics we do keep and we put in our comic shelf, or most of the comics we do keep, not all of them. This one could be interesting. It's called The American Vampire Series, Southern Blood, Vampire Stories from the American South. Edited by Lawrence Schmiel and Martin H. Greenberg. This is one of the later books. It's called And the Prisoner's Dilemma. I see the Mysterious Benedict Society all the time in little free libraries. I remember reading the first 2 or 3 books and really enjoying them. I sometimes think about rereading them, but they are like young adult books, maybe middle grade books. I don't know. I sometimes think about rereading them, but will I ever reread them? I think I can let this one go. This I can tell is a fake book. It is a book, but my husband sometimes makes fake books, and you can tell he started this one. Noir, a collection of crime comics, can definitely go on the comic shelf. Sherlock Holmes Mystery Magazine, Unhaul. Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the Raleigh Legacy, another book by L.B. Greenwood. So L.B. Greenwood really made a living on rewriting Sherlock Holmes or updating Sherlock Holmes. Uh-oh, there's quite a few here. Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, 5 New Adventures. No. Sherlock Holmes Magazine. Sherlock Holmes Magazine. The Curious Cases of Sherlock Holmes. This is a comic. Do I need this? I don't think I need this. I love Sherlock Holmes a great deal, but like there's only so much you can do. Here's a receipt from Book Court. Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson, Their Strange Cases. Another comic. Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, 5 New Mysteries. No. And another Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. That was a good box because we did not encounter any mold and we did not keep a lot of those books. So let's see. There were 22 books in that last box. We're only keeping 2 to go back in the basement. We have 1 maybe that I have to look into that's going on the look into pile. We have 17 to unhaul, and then we did have 2 comics in there. So that is pretty good. We got through another 3 boxes, and I would say we've unhauled at least a box worth, and we have only like half a box worth to put in the basement, so we're still doing okay there. We do have quite a few to go on the TBR, but a lot of them are poetry. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned here, and if I should prioritize any of them. Thanks so much for joining me and Irving today, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!